At 6:15 a.m., I saw 12 bulldozers rip through my land, crush 30 hives, and annihilate my bees. My weathered hands trembled inside torn beekeeping gloves. Cold sweat slick beneath my suit. 3 days left until the city hears the permit appeal that could halt this. The cleared apiary lay bare. Mud churned, broken frames scattered. I limped toward the chain-link fence, knee stiff from yesterday's climb over the locked gate. Security guards paced inside, eyes sharp, radios crackling orders. Their presence thickened the air. I raised my camera, capturing every foot of devastation I could see. The 30 hives were gone. Only twisted metal and wood blinded my gaze. A guard barked, "No closer," blocking my path with an outstretched arm. His dog growled low. I nodded, stepping back, but my gaze fixed on a discarded GPS logger near the bulldozer tracks. The device lay half buried in mud. "Did you call this in?" I asked a nearby inspector. "No." He shrugged. "Contractors handle site security now." The 15-minute gap in the construction footage gnawed at me. The security cameras recorded everything, except from 6:05 to 6:20 a.m., the exact window bulldozers began their work. An unexplained blackout during the site's most crucial destruction suggested deliberate erasure. That missing footage could make or break our case. I crouched to retrieve the GPS logger. Mud clung to my gloves, fingers numbed. My knee protested, sharp pain shooting with every shift. The data showed the bulldozer started precisely at 6:10 a.m., 2 minutes before the cameras went dark. Bellamy's men planned this, I muttered, rubbing my knee. No permits had been served, no warnings posted. The city's approval process was underway, but the destruction raced ahead. They gambled that by finishing first, the damage would stand. From a distance, a truck unloaded extra security personnel, new guards in dark uniforms with radios clipped to belts. Bellamy's message was clear: no interference allowed. The dogs barked constantly now. My access was shrinking. I checked my watch, 6:45 a.m. 71 hours remain before the permit review hearing. A single misstep now could forfeit our position. I snapped pictures of the fence's beaten lock and the bulldozer tracks, every scrap of evidence I'd negotiate for legality. My phone buzzed. A message from our legal aid. City Hall confirmed Bellamy fast-tracking permits with support from Councilman Heller. Opposition's window closing. I exhaled slowly, steadying my breath. This was no longer just about bees or land. It was a battle against an orchestrated rush wrapped in legal wrappings. I stood at the edge of the erased apiary, already counting every remaining hour to untangle the deliberate destruction from the official record. And inside me, beneath the fatigue and pain, resolve hardened. Bellamy's security patrols could be firm, but the law and the community's memory held cracks. I needed every fragment of proof before the deadline. Every minute mattered, especially the ones conveniently missing. I stood in my cramped workshop, the window above my bench faintly fogged as I lifted a fresh sheet of data printouts. The prototype noise device rested on the table, humming quietly. 70 hours until the permit hearing. The bruise on my right hand throbbed, a raw reminder from yesterday's hive transfer. My weathered fingers stiffened as I prepared new hives for the secondary apiary on the town's edge. The plan hinged on retraining the bees to respond precisely to noise frequencies. The device emitted calibrated decibel pulses that triggered agitation, signaling the bees to cluster or disperse on command. Success meant covert control during inspections or unauthorized activity. Failure meant losing all leverage. I slid the scratched sound generator from its case and adjusted the decibel dial to 75. The initial tests showed promising agitation responses. My hope was pinned on progress tonight. Outside, the steady drone of 18 trucks passed by. Marcus Bellamy's legal team had arranged continuous overnight noise inspections. Decibel monitors stationed near the original site relayed false alarms, tools to paint my efforts as disturbances. One monitor was concealed inside my delivery boxes, discovered today when logging equipment arrivals. Hauling the largest hive box forward, I eased off its worn lid. Inside, bees stirred, sensing movement. Daylight glinted off their chitin shells. A faint honey scent mingled with the morning air. I needed to move them without trauma. Yesterday's shift had cost me. A cracked rib slowed me, and fumbled clamps left bruises across my right knuckles. Each maneuver demanded caution. Bees are unforgiving when stressed. Switching on the noise device, the first 3 hives reacted as expected, agitating, then calming as the pulse ceased. But the last 2 remained docile. Then, under the same code, one hive clustered tightly, while another scattered completely. Confusion rippled through me. This inconsistency risked unraveling the entire strategy. No, 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 I murmured, jaw tight. The bees' disobedience wasn't just a training glitch. Something was off in their sensory response. Perhaps the prototype's frequency range wasn't stable across all frames. Recalibration would be next, but with the clock ticking, there was little margin left. Upstairs, the phone rang sharply. It was Sarah, my contact at City Council, voice low. Bellamy's pushing a last-minute motion. They'll try to fast-track the permit before the hearing. You need stronger evidence, test data from the noise device, to challenge their legality. I exhaled slowly, eyes drifting to the bruise. I had to push harder despite the pain. Losing trust, whether from the bees or community, wasn't an option. I'll start recalibration tonight, I replied. If training accelerates, maybe we regain control. A pause. Then Sarah added, They've got decibel monitors active on all construction staging areas this week. Any noise spikes from your device will flag you instantly. The device hummed louder, its metal case warming under my palm. With Bellamy's monitors tracking every decibel, my approach demanded stealth and precision. The bees had to respond perfectly, or my defense would collapse. I wrapped my bruised hand with gauze and initiated a new sound sequence. Subtler this time, testing if lower levels could trigger consistent hive patterns. The bees shifted uneasily, but complied better. It was a fragile start. Tonight, I'd run continuous trials. Success could mean a legal defense forcing Bellamy's hand, quietly, methodically. Failure would render the permit hearing a formality, and my legacy would crumble with the bees. A large truck rolled past outside, brake lights casting red into the darkening street. Construction crews were still mobilizing. Bellamy's presence pressed closer. The fight narrowed to controlling invisible sound waves and a few thousand winged lives. Setting the sound device on repeat, eyes fixed on the hives, I searched for the moment when code met obedience. The uneven reactions meant one thing. The next 66 hours would demand every ounce of patience I had left. Dust settled on the cracked concrete rooftop of 42 Maple Street as I unfolded my battered beekeeping suit. 5 neighbours watched warily from windows and terraces, their eyes fixed on the 3 glass-walled hives I'd carefully brought up. The narrow staircase groaned beneath my weight. My arthritic knees protested with each step. 48 hours remained before Bellamy's crews resumed bulldozing. My window was closing. "Are you sure they won't sting?" Mrs. Calder from 40 Maple called out. Her voice trembled, fingers tight around the railing. Nearby, a child darted backwards, eyes wide at the low hum rising from the hives. No worse than city bees, I replied calmly. I've trained them to avoid aggression using the prototype noise emitter. I set the device beside the nearest hive, wires snaking from the patched contraption. Still adjusting frequencies to keep them calm. Unease rippled through the neighbours. The construction crew spread rumours about invasive pests, Marcus Bellamy's latest tactic. Flyers slipped under doors claimed bees carried diseases. One neighbour refused to sign my petition. Earlier, a single agitated hive sent a child twitching to his mother's arms, costing me half a dozen neighbour signatures. I plugged in the noise emitter. The exhaust fan whirred loudly at first, unsettling the bees, then settled into a low, rhythmic pulse. Most bees quieted. Some drifted into the sky in scattered formations. I jotted notes with a shaking hand. Lower frequencies calm more, I muttered. Someone watching us. I whispered, after spotting a figure through a cracked door at 44 Maple, a man in a hard hat and neon vest. He vanished when I looked up. The distant hum of bulldozers reminded me of the tick-tock countdown. 43 hours left until the city council hearing that would either freeze Bellamy's permits or rubber stamp his expansion. Support from neighbours was my fragile shield. Suddenly, a voice cracked from behind. "I can help." I turned sharply to see Mr. Lang, a seldom-seen rooftop neighbour from 46 Maple, adjusting a radio headset. "I work for Bellamy's site security. I can give you access codes and quiet hours schedules, discreetly." Shock froze me mid-breath. His position meant surveillance cameras, movement logs, patrols, all vulnerable to exposure if mishandled. "How do I know I can trust you?" I asked, masking skepticism. His gaze swept the empty rooftop, voice low. "You're the only one who talks sense. Bellamy is tightening his grip. Legal advisors, politicians, PR crews monitoring social media. They're prepping for fast permit approval. I weighed the risk. A possible inside ally versus betrayal. This intel could reveal shift changes and lapses in monitoring, letting me place hives closer to the site without confrontation. Agreed, but one false move, and the neighbourhood turns against us, I warned. He nodded. Understood. Lang pulled out a small tablet and handed over a detailed schedule of construction shifts, entry codes, and patrol routes. My fingers trembled. This was no mere gift. It was a lifeline. Minutes later, a sudden buzz erupted from one hive. A cluster swarmed angrily toward the open railing. Below, a child gasped sharply. I raised my arms, steadying the hive's frame. "Calm now," I whispered, activating the emitter at maximum safe output. The bees slowed, retreating reluctantly. One neighbour muttered, "We can't handle this." Another turned away. Fragile trust wavered. As I secured the hives, the stakes soared. One careless ripple could shatter neighbour support, tip the hearing, and silence my struggle. Yet the information from Lang promised a narrow breach, an unguarded path through Bellamy's fortress. I stored the tablet beneath my coat and glanced back toward the city skyline, catching the faint scent of exhaust and dust. The clock ticked down. Every moment, every move, truly mattered. The community centre's fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I sat near the back, clutching my notes. My voice was rough from days of talking. 47 people filled folding chairs, some leaning forward intently. A few skeptics waited for a chance to challenge me. The ticking clock pressed on. 66 hours until Bellamy's crews returned with heavier machinery. I scanned the audience. Mrs. Calder sat nearby, her hands twitching nervously, whispering concerns about stings and safety. Several others exchanged doubtful glances. Bellamy's paid attendees, planted among them, murmured opposing opinions. The developer's reach stretched far. One man's loud snorts and repeated coughs punctuated my presentation, a tactic to unsettle me. Clearing my throat, I carefully began laying out the facts: bee behavior, environmental impact, and how the hives stabilized the neighborhood ecosystem. I avoided raising my voice, knowing how much it strained my ribs and knees. Faint coughs from the audience repeated like background percussion. Fatigue deepened with each passing minute. My voice thinned, stretched tight as a violin string. Halfway through, Sarah's message flashed on my phone. News crew confirmed for tomorrow. Filming at the site. Expect interference. My pulse quickened. Bellamy's media connections surfaced again. They planned to frame the bees as hazards, pushing their permit approval. Tension thickened as Bellamy's sympathizers shifted seats, whispering. Then, the door opened abruptly. A woman with a purposeful stride took the front row. A leader from the Regional Environmental Coalition, unexpected yet unmistakable. Her presence rippled through the room's skepticism. Standing, she spoke with steady authority. I've reviewed Ms. Harper's data and personal work. The bees are vital to this area, not threats. I support their continued protection. Murmurs shifted. Some skeptics folded arms, others blinked, reconsidering. I nodded toward her, steady despite the wear dragging through me. Her endorsement cracked Bellamy's carefully built facade. The man who'd been coughing moved toward the exit, his ruse undone. The environmental leader's intervention reset the meeting's dynamic, yet a new threat loomed. If Bellamy's filming captured chaos, the narrative could still tilt in his favor. Mrs. Calder's hesitant but softened expression caught my eye, a sign that community sentiment was shifting. Despite clearer minds, my body betrayed me. My voice wavered as I made final remarks, knees aching with every word. Sarah's earlier warning grounded me. Tomorrow's filming was pivotal. Success depended on order. Disruption would hand Bellamy an advantage. I closed the meeting with calm authority, calling for community vigilance and unity without naming Bellamy. The energy felt fragile, but leaning toward support. Outside, distant construction noises punctuated the night, the heavy machinery testing the limits of patience and permits. I touched my bruised knuckles reflexively, the weight of legal battles pressing down on worn shoulders. Every spoken word cost more than speech itself. It pushed through bones and exhaustion. The stakes tightened. Protect the bees, the land, and the fragile legal shield before the heavy machines returned. As the crowd dispersed, I filmed their faces, evidence of community resolve. Tomorrow's news crew might amplify or twist this. I had 66 hours and a fragile voice to prepare. Bellamy's next move wouldn't wait. At 5:22 a.m., the first heavy equipment rumbled at the eastern edge of the construction zone beside Oak Ridge Park. From my perch on the abandoned water tower, my battered beekeeping gloves gripped the cold metal railing. My arthritic knees throbbed from climbing the rusted ladder, but the view made it worth the effort. 12 trucks circled like vultures, ready to level soil destined for bee habitat restoration. With only 62 hours left before the city permit review, every second counted. I adjusted my worn suit jacket over the thin beekeeping suit. My bruised knuckles throbbed, a reminder of yesterday's struggle moving protective hive boxes through narrow alleys to avoid Bellamy's patrols. Legally barred from stepping onto the site, circumvention wasn't an option. The stakes were too high for mistakes. The colony depended on precise timing to trigger a swarm that would disrupt crucial machinery before Bellamy's accelerated timeline erased every chance we had. Yesterday afternoon, a breakthrough arrived in my inbox, a coded message from the developer's chief engineer. It held encrypted blueprints, detailed shift schedules, and a fragile window when security patrols slackened. The engineer's aid was the edge we desperately needed. If I could synchronize the bee's response with the critical pulley and crane activations, the swarm would force a work stoppage legally and safely. Earlier, Mr. Lang had slipped me access logs and patrol routines. His soft voice rasped through the radio, warning that Bellamy had hired extra security to offset delays caused by mine and the community's objections. Bellamy's legal team fast-tracked permits, pushing inspectors to rubber-stamp plans. The city council's indecisiveness played into his hands, but the leaked plans created a blind spot in his operation. Still, the clock was against me. Setting up my prototype noise emitter near a barely covered conduit, I deployed a small cluster of scout bees in microflight. The device emitted calibrated vibration patterns designed to calm neighbors while stimulating hive activity. I noted every frequency on my GPS logger, documenting environmental conditions with tired eyes and trembling fingers. Then, a low drone overhead shifted, the sound of an approaching patrol. The garden below was silent. I retreated to the alley behind the site's fenced perimeter, gingerly placing a sealed vial of pheromone markers inside my jacket pocket. The minor stings from yesterday's encounter still stung, but hadn't incapacitated me. I refused medical visits that might provoke Bellamy's scrutiny. My next steps depended on the swarm's reaction within the precise timeline. If I miscalculated, the bees would arrive too late or scatter without impact. At 6:34 a.m., the crane's motor groaned to life, just as the chief engineer's schedule predicted. I whispered the command sequence into the prototype. A push of amplified buzz frequencies to the hives triggered a chain reaction. The first swarm lifted, black clouds pulsing. Within seconds, hundreds of thousands of bees surged toward the heavy machinery. Alarms blared across the site. Workers scrambled under frantic orders. A sudden, sharp pain stabbed my right palm. I glanced down to see a few bees embedded in thinning fabric around my fingers. I swallowed the sting, counting every puncture. My voice came out hoarse as I recorded exact times and hive responses. Security guards rushed to fire hoses while drone cameras zoomed in on the halted equipment. Then, silence. The swarm retreated swiftly, redirected by subtle hums from my sound generator. I logged a final note. Tactical retreat, executed at 6:42 a.m., with bulldozers idle for 48 minutes, enough to trigger critical reporting delays. The micro-twist was a lifeline. With the engineer's inside knowledge, I'd secured a disruption window previously impossible. The wounds stung, but hope burned sharper. Bellamy's legal acceleration stalled. The community's fragile support flickered with every small victory. I wiped sweat from my exhausted eyes, the faint scent of wildflowers carried on the morning breeze, and prepared to upload all data to Sarah before the city hearing. In 62 hours, everything would come to a head. The studio's fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I sat stiffly on the hard chair, my bruised knuckles tapping gently against the worn camera case on my lap. They called me onto the live set in less than 5 minutes. Hours earlier, a carefully edited video of a bee swarm had started trending online, showing bees clustering aggressively around the developer's heavy machinery, halting work at Oak Ridge Park. The timing struck me as too precise to be mere coincidence. The interviewer's room flickered on the screen, already buzzing with activity. Facing the cameras, I steadied my trembling fingers and adjusted my battered beekeeping suit jacket. My arthritic knees protested the slightest movement. I silently rehearsed the calm tone I needed, one to break through the PR spin Marcus Bellamy's team had tirelessly propagated. "Ms. Harper, your critics say you're alarmist." The Bellamy spokesman cut in as the feed went live. "Swarming bees aren't unusual around construction sites. This is natural behavior blown out of proportion." Behind his cold, measured voice lay years of political muscle and crooked permits quietly signed. His words carried the weight of Bellamy's iron grip on the city. I nodded slowly. The footage reveals deliberate disruption, not random chance. These bees reacted directly to our prototype signal emitter. This morning's interference delayed machinery by 48 crucial minutes, buying time that saved the restoration site. The spokesman leaned forward, eyes sharp. "Your evidence is circumstantial. You don't control the entire habitat or the city's approval process. Residents worry your tactics risk public safety." I caught the twitch of nerves behind his facade. "Residents? Several have filed official complaints against Bellamy's noise and pollution. I hold documented community support recorded just yesterday." The broadcast cut to verified tweets and videos. My chest tightened, a cocktail of fatigue and fragile hope. The interviewer pressed harder. "How do you respond to reports of stings and traffic disruption?" I glanced down at my torn gloves, noting the fading swelling on my right hand. "Every intervention has risks, but prolonged legal battles will devastate the environment I'm fighting to protect." Minutes later, during commercial break, whispers spread. There was a swarm gathering outside. The studio doors burst open. "Cut to live, urgent," a producer barked into his headset. Suddenly, dozens of tiny black dots filled the camera view. A frenzied swarm had formed on the plaza, circling aggressively, unnerving pedestrians and stopping traffic. The newsroom gasped as reporters scrambled to capture the scene. Behind the glass, Bellamy's crew stood frozen, dark uniforms and hard hats like sentinels. Politicians tied to Bellamy branded the swarm a hazardous riot, painting the bees as threats. But the live interruption flipped public opinion. Comments flooded social feeds, condemning Bellamy's war on nature. Supporters shared videos validating our cause, tipping the media tide. I touched the GPS logger in my jacket pocket and spoke quietly to the camera. "This swarm is no accident. It's a precise response, synchronized with our intercepted construction schedules and community efforts. The bees defend what's left." Outside, the swarm began to disperse, leaving stunned onlookers and a rattled enemy. Bellamy's team struck back within hours, legal threats against neighbors, restraining orders aimed at activists. The pressure rose, but so did public scrutiny. Only 58 hours remained before the city hearing. This disruption bought us crucial time, but intensified Bellamy's crackdown. I exhaled slowly, aware that every public moment brought me closer to danger and to victory. The City Hall archives were bathed in dim light and chilled by cold air conditioning. At 9:17 p.m., I settled into the narrow reading booth, a stack of permit files spread before me. My bruised knuckles throbbed faintly beneath torn gloves, and arthritic knees protested every subtle shift in my chair. My eyes strained behind foggy glasses as I scanned the documents. 48 hours remained before the vote would allow Bellamy's crews to resume clearing Oak Ridge Park. I hunted for overlooked details, an incomplete review, a regulatory misstep. Most files were sealed behind bureaucratic red tape. Updated permit documents were confidential due to last-minute amendments. I'd scheduled this visit under the guise of a community safety complaint, the only legal way inside. My fingers trembled as I flipped to the latest environmental impact report. Annotations crowded the margins, but the final pages of the amendment were missing. Hours wore on. 9:45, 10:12, 10:48 p.m. on my GPS logger. Each page chipped away at my stamina, ribs aching from past injuries, vision blurring. Still, I pressed on, the faint hum of the air conditioning slick against my skin, adding to the sterile atmosphere. At 10:53, beneath thick black ink obscuring most content, I found an unsigned page, the missing signature of City Planning Director Morales. His endorsement was the one crucial seal that validated the environmental assessment. Before I could grasp the significance, a city clerk entered. "Ms. Harper, we received a new file," she said, sliding a sealed envelope across the desk. It was a last-minute amended environmental report uploaded by Bellamy's legal team, confirming updated mitigation steps they claimed addressed prior concerns. This counteroffer bought time and lent plausible compliance, but the signature gap rendered the document technically incomplete. I jotted notes with shaking hands. The weight of this contradiction settled on me like the cold air. Bellamy counted on bureaucratic delay and fatigue to push the permit through, but this missing signature could give us legal footing to challenge him. I called Sarah. Her voice crackled urgently over the weak line. "If Morales didn't sign, that's a procedural flaw. We can file for a rehearing or injunction immediately." Tapping my worn beekeeping jacket, I swallowed the urge to rub my aching ribs. "I'll get the copy scanned and delivered within the hour." Minutes blurred. My knees buckled briefly, arthritic and weak. I took deep breaths, steadying my voice for the upcoming council briefing. Exhaustion gnawed with every movement, but the discovery reignited my resolve. The community depended on this stalled permit. Outside, distant construction noises crept closer as Bellamy's security tightened contacts with politicians favoring his project. Their legal teams scrambled to present the amended report as conclusive, pushing for swift approval. I knew their lawful countermove, delay masquerading as compliance to override opposition. At 11:15 p.m., I packed the fragile papers and my prototype noise emitter device. The library would close soon. One slip now, and Bellamy would win by default. Walking out, my weathered hands clutched the taped documents tightly. Each step echoed my physical limits and my determination. The missing signature wasn't just a paper gap, it was a crack in the developer's armor. With 32 hours left, I had grounds to challenge, to delay construction, and buy time for the bees. The fight wasn't over. Not yet. I climbed onto Mr. Lang's rooftop, overlooking the cluster of hives at Oak Ridge Park. The sun had climbed past 8:30 a.m., casting a sharp warmth against the cool morning air. The air buzzed thick with agitation, an ominous sign. 12 crews in neon vests crowded the ground below, fumigators and sprayers in hand. My legs ached, arthritis gnawing deeper with every slow step. I pulled my worn jacket tighter and adjusted my torn gloves. The bruises on my knuckles throbbed fiercely but wouldn't stop me. "Lang," I whispered through the radio. "Any sign of the new contractors?" "Yeah," his voice crackled. 3 men in blackout gear, unauthorized. Pesticide equipment checked, none on the city registry. He tapped a tablet, swiping through security logs. "Bellamy's playing dirty." I stared past neighboring roofs at the hives. 2 swarms darted lazily, but with a strange purpose near the treetops. The bees' chaos had turned violent before. Today promised worse. My timer showed 36 hours until the public hearing. The stakes were unparalleled. Every lost hive would ripple across the ecosystem, suppressing native plants and choking the community's fragile air quality. Then, a sharp hiss broke through, the telltale spray of toxins. I focused on Hive 3, where a thin mist wafted from a hidden nozzle. The chemical hung like a ghost over the honeycomb's edge. My breath caught. 2 hives faltered, bees dropping lifeless before they could react. I grabbed my pheromone vial, releasing a selective signal to rally those still airborne. The effort was urgent. Bellamy's crew pushed past legal limits. "We need proof," Lang said over static. "I've got video from the rooftop cams. Sending now." I fumbled the camera with fingers stiff from cold and exhaustion. The evidence felt surreal. Chemical clouds defying regulations, workers ignoring official badges. Bellamy's legal team filed paperwork daily, but here was undeniable proof of unlicensed pesticide use. Then the radio crackled again. "Neighbours are out front, Ms. Harper. Some forming a barricade." As if summoned, a cluster of residents gathered below, despite Bellamy's security shouting warnings. Mrs. Calder's trembling voice pierced the din. "You can't poison our bees and expect to keep construction safe." I rubbed my aching ribs, sharp pain reminding me of last week's protest arrest. Physical limits pressed hard, but the community rallied stronger than my battered hands. The pesticide mist thickened. I felt the sting of defeat as 2 hives collapsed. Loss marked the ground beneath like burnt earth. Yet the neighbours shielded the remaining installations with makeshift shields and umbrellas. Their bodies became a buffer against further chemical assault. Bellamy's crews hesitated. Their advance slowed. The standoff tipped the balance. I logged every moment, the video feed capturing the clash. Physical loss weighed heavily, but so did the communal surge. Their voices answered Bellamy's lawyering with immediate presence. Lang's voice cut in again, urgent now. "You need to move." "The foreman spotted you. They're sending 2 guards up." I adjusted my gait, knees creaking under me. On my way. Every step measured against pain, every breath a calculation. The clock was unforgiving. Descending the fire escape, I grasped the prototype noise device ready, not to fight violence, but to disrupt the chemical sprayer's signals. The swarm above stirred, sensing protection and peril intertwined. Within 36 hours, the hearing would unfold. Evidence sealed, neighbours emboldened, hives damaged but defended. Bellamy escalated, yet so did we, legally and physically. The battle carved itself raw across rooftops and streets. This was no longer just about my bees or land. It was about the community's breath, its future exposed and alive beneath the buzzing swarm. The next move would dictate everything. I entered Bellamy's downtown office at 8:36 a.m., my name recorded in the visitor log alongside 3 construction supervisors and 2 legal aides. The sleek glass conference room felt sterile, cold under harsh fluorescent lights. I unfolded the folder containing the amended environmental report, notably missing Director Morales' signature. My arthritic knees ached as I settled into the stiff chair facing Bellamy and his 2 sharply dressed lawyers. Bellamy's jaw tightened when I presented the evidence. The unsigned amendment. A hidden invoice listing pesticide costs that didn't match approved materials, and intercepted emails exposing his plan to rush approvals. His lawyer's fingers drummed impatiently on the scarred mahogany table, eyes sharp behind thick lenses. "We have no intention of renegotiating," Bellamy said flatly. "Your team's delays are costing the project millions. The council meeting proceeds as scheduled. You and your neighbours received eviction notices last night," he added, sliding envelopes sealed with official letterhead across the table. Rooftop occupiers will be removed under city ordinance. I thumbed through the notices, the crisp paper smelling faintly of ink, the legal jargon threatening fines and injunctions within 24 hours. My bruised knuckles clenched tighter around the folder. The cost of resistance had skyrocketed. My community's presence was now at immediate risk of forced eviction and prosecution. Before I could respond, a junior engineer, a man I hadn't seen before, slipped a folded note beside my camera. He caught my glance and nodded once before quietly retreating. Inside were scanned copies of bank receipts and emails, concrete proof of a bribe attempt from Bellamy's office to city planning staff. This was the leverage I needed. Bellamy's spokesman interrupted, masking irritation beneath a polished smile. "This is hearsay, unfounded and unrelated. You're grasping at straws. We have every permit in order." His calm tone barely concealed his urgency. Bellamy's legal team was preparing for an aggressive counter. I met Bellamy's gaze, voice steady, despite weakness. "These documents prove your intent to subvert the legal process. We will submit this to the council and city inspector. Your eviction notices do not intimidate us." Bellamy's expression hardened. "You underestimate the resources behind this project. Security will enforce those notices tonight. The hearing will proceed on schedule. Expect no delays." My hands trembled slightly, the torn gloves barely shielding my battered skin. The prototype noise device in my bag beeped softly. Next on the list of defenses, Lang's rooftop videos of illegal pesticide spraying lined up perfectly with this evidence. The stakes surged higher. I balanced legal strategy against escalating hostility and looming eviction. Outside the glass window, a neon-vested crew bustled unaware that I held their employer's secrets. The clock ticked. Fewer than 24 hours until the hearing and possible court injunction. I turned back to my folder, reviewing files Sarah had sent me earlier. I had to file an emergency request to suspend the eviction and halt the permit approval. Bellamy rose, signalling the meeting's end. "We'll see how the council views sanctuary for trespassers." As I gathered my documents, the engineer's brief visit echoed in my mind. A crack in Bellamy's facade, an opening for defense. I would need every ounce of resolve and my community's strength to protect what remained of our hives and our land. The local community centre's worn conference room smelled faintly of mildew and burnt coffee. The clock read 8:50 a.m. I gripped the edges of my torn gloves. My bruised knuckles throbbed with tension. 12 hours until the city hearing decided my land's fate, and the weight was heavier than ever. Bellamy's legal team pressured the station. "They're holding the footage." Sarah's voice crackled softly through my phone speaker. "They're scared." I adjusted the worn beekeeping jacket over my arthritic knees. "We can't back down. The video shows Bellamy offering a bribe to the planning official. That cuts through any denial." My weathered hands tightened around the small vial of pheromones I carried, a reminder of the hives lost to illegal spraying. Those bees and I fought different fronts, but the enemy was the same. Outside, Mr. Lang's voice was low, cautious. "Bellamy's media pressure is intense. He went live an hour ago denying all violations. The company's spinning the story fast." I scanned reporters milling near the entrance. Underestimating the opponent was a risk we couldn't afford. Bellamy's legal team maneuvered inside, armed with city politicians on speed dial. The public needed more than rumors. They needed proof. Inside, the station manager's face was set like stone. "We know the risks. Slander claims, personal attacks. The developer's ready to sue." Her gaze caught my bruised hand, the gauze, the weary eyes. "But this recording changes everything." I clicked the remote. The screen lit with the video. Bellamy's face close, voice low, offering money to a city official. The officials were stunned. Even the cynical reporter leaned forward. The atmosphere shifted. The community's barricade on the rooftop, the silent battle fought between dying bees and chemical clouds. It culminated here. Stalled permits, eviction notices, legal threats, all hinged on this moment. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. Sarah's message blinked. Leaked email hit local news. Bellamy's legal team in panic. I opened the forwarded message. Internal memos showing frantic orders to suppress evidence, cancel media appearances, sabotage council members opposing the developer. The room stirred. The manager nodded toward the newsroom. We're airing this live during prime time tonight. Bellamy's control over media is cracking. Minutes later, Bellamy's spokesman took a live call. He repeated their clean record and attacked the video as doctored. His eyes were calm, but I caught a flicker of unease when the email leak flashed on the anchor's screen behind him. Outside, neighbours clutched flyers and phones, their nerves raw, but hope sparked. Mrs. Calder approached quietly, voice trembling. If this gets out before the hearing, maybe the city will listen. I steadied my voice. They will. They have to. My feet ached from hours on concrete. My ribs complained with each breath. But my resolve sharpened. The clock ticked relentlessly toward the hearing, the stakes clear. Expose Bellamy's illegal tactics, or lose everything. By noon, the station confirmed the embargo would lift at 6 p.m., unleashing the evidence on live TV. Bellamy's team scrambled to rally politicians, make last-minute promises, threaten anyone wavering. But the damage was done. The developer's facade cracked wide open. I looked down at my cracked rib, hands shaking despite the calm I tried to project. Protecting these hives had cost me dearly, and now the fight moved beyond pesticides and rooftops into the unforgiving arena of public scrutiny. The scandal would break before the permit hearing, and with it, the city's blind eye might finally widen. The city council hearing room smelled of varnished wood and tension. At 10 a.m. exactly, I settled into the hard chair, my voice strained and nearly gone after days of non-stop testimony. My weathered hands gripped the edge of the table, knuckles bruised, gauze wrapped tight around my left hand. I wore my worn beekeeping suit jacket over a threadbare shirt, a muted shield against exhaustion. Sarah sat beside me, quietly organizing papers. She passed me a slim stack of evidence, just as the hearing opened. The clock on the wall ticked relentlessly, my last chance to stop Marcus Bellamy's project legally before the permits were finalized. Bellamy's legal advisor paced behind his table, dark suits flanking him like armor, poised to deflect every challenge. His security detail filled the back of the room in bright neon vests and hard hats, faces stone cold, betraying no doubt. Bellamy himself arrived late, sitting stiffly with a sour expression. I began. This project violates city environmental codes, unsupported by accurate pesticide reports, I said steadily, though my voice rasped. We've uncovered intercepted emails and bank transfers, indicating attempted bribery of city planning officials. I held up a tablet displaying hidden invoices for banned chemicals, evidence discovered just hours before. The council murmured. Councilwoman Lynn abruptly rose. "Ms. Harper," she said sharply, "we've received new information implicating the developer in bribery attempts toward council staff." Papers were handed out quickly. This breaches multiple statutes and grounds for permit revocation per Code 54B. Bellamy's legal team faltered. He attempted a last-minute charm offensive. This project brings jobs and growth. My client has complied with every requirement, his spokesman declared smoothly, trying to sway undecided council members by claiming misinterpretation of documents. But the atmosphere shifted palpably. At exactly 10:32, the door opened. A stern woman in official uniform entered, the Regional Environmental Regulations Officer. Her arrival was unexpected. She carried sealed documents confirming Bellamy's failure to disclose key violations. "This project cannot proceed under current permits," she declared, voice authoritative. "I formally recommend suspension pending a full investigation." The council absorbed the statement silently. Bellamy visibly tensed. His team whispered urgently, papers shuffled frantically. Just before the vote, Bellamy's lead attorney leaned into the mic. "We hereby withdraw the permit application." A wave of shocked silence followed. The council announced a recess. Outside, I tasted dryness in my mouth, exhaustion pressing heavily in my ribs and knees. Despite pain, I stood slowly, cradling the proof that saved 30 hives from destruction. The permit was revoked. Bellamy's project was stopped, at least for now. As I exited, the local news crew captured the moment live. Their report revealed leaked emails showing Bellamy's bribery attempts, an official scandal unraveling in public view. I paused, feeling the sharp sting of physical fatigue from constant strain. My hand tightened around a vial of pheromone, a quiet reminder of the bees still depending on me. The legal battle was won today, but the fight to protect this land was far from over.